renewal next year. I conveyed India's interest in continued professional training and interactions between the two armies. We also explored possibilities for expanding collaboration in defense R&D and industry, which has unrealized potential. I am confident that the outcomes of our meeting today will be a major milestone in the development of our bilateral defense engagement with Singapore. I now request Dr. Ng to make his statement. Thank you.
I have a few words to add to Minister Sitharaman's comprehensive speech on our second Defence Ministers' dialogue. I would say that it's been overwhelmingly successful and productive. Not very often that Defence Minister for another country can have the privilege of being flown in your excellent light combat aircraft, the Tejas. As I said yesterday, utterly impressed with your pilot as well as the aircraft. But beyond that, what has marked this successful Defence Ministers' dialogue is the meeting of minds and shared perspectives from both Singapore and India with regard to our defence relations. But at large, the security architecture, the rules that govern, if you like, the way nations conduct relations with one another. I think there's reasons for this. Both Singapore and India sit astride key lines of sea lines of communication, as well as overland that connect Asia and Europe. We recognize that regional stability, the international rule of law is essential for trade and commerce to flourish, and we have a vested interest in upkeeping that system. And it was because of these very deeply entrenched value systems that I think both our countries share that we were able to decide very quickly on our approach to issues such as terrorism and maritime security, which included capabilities in responding to chemical, biological, and radiological threats, as well as the need for information sharing against the threat of terrorism. We both shared the concern with the developments in Iraq and Syria, that the theater of operations for terrorism can shift to our parts of the world. And we were determined that we would step up mechanisms to share information with regard to the threat of terrorism. Not only from the point of view of our militaries being able to respond, but to hold accountable, whether they were state-sponsored or non-state-sponsored or non-state actors, those who were responsible for the perpetration of these terrorist acts. We also discussed at length our desire to step up cooperation in the maritime domain, and here I would echo what Minister Sitharaman said in terms of institutionalizing those mechanisms where we have more bilateral and multilateral maritime exchanges, especially in India's waters as well as the Straits of Malacca, the Indian Oceans and the Andaman Seas. And here we would like to, as Singapore has strongly supported India's proposals and will do its best and utmost to facilitate what we can as ASEAN chair next year. I was very thankful that we concluded the bilateral Navy agreement, which will facilitate these measures, as well as agreed to look into not only renewing the agreements between our armies and our air forces, but to step up the level of engagements. And we also agreed that there was enormous scope for defense technology cooperation and to see how to institutionalize it that well. So it leaves me to conclude by thanking Minister and your service chiefs, as well as the government and the people of India, for being extremely hospitable hosts to the Singapore Armed Forces. I will tell you that my troops, when I spoke to them in Kalaikunda, were very pleased with the cuisine and the food they were taking. I'm not sure why they are so enamored of that, but I suspect they're better chefs here than perhaps elsewhere. But thank you again for the enormous warmth and for facilitating this very, very productive trip. Thank you very much.